I always wanted to be, or earlier I wanted to be like a more traditional artist, or I've drawn my entire life, and I painted as well, and I thought I would be more of maybe like a traditional artist, or maybe an illustrator. And like after high school, I did like this short. I took this art course for 6 months, or only a few months. But in Denmark, we have this school called high school or højskole, which is like it's like a boarding school for grown-ups. And I went to the school which specialized in architecture, and media design, and I specialized in art there. And I saw that most of my teachers there, they had sort of set out to be artists, and a lot of them just had a hard time, like, doing that as a full-time job. And to me, it just seemed kind of, or a little sad, just, if you wanted to be an artist and then ended up, having to, teach most of the time, and maybe you would sell a painting, every 6 months. So that sort of made me reconsider, and, I figured maybe I had to learn how to use a computer, so eventually I applied to this design school in the town where I lived. And at the time I didn't really know much about the requirements, and I didn't really have a good portfolio or anything. I just had random drawings I'd made, and so I didn't get in. And in Denmark, you happen to get money from the government to study, and I just moved into a new apartment with my girlfriend, and I had to pay rent, so I just took this, or I started this multimedia design education, it was brand new at the time, or I was like the second generation of students, and that would, cover my rent, but also it was, it seemed like if I wasn't going to find anything better, that was like a good, way to sort of spend my time. And I knew graphic design was part of the curriculum, so at least that sort of interested me. And then my second year there, we had to do an internship, and we had the same year we had a guest lecturer from San Francisco, and he offered me an internship at his company, but also like he had like a small one-man production company where he would mostly go and shoot things. And I think he quickly figured out that I wasn't a very good camera operator. Like, I didn't have very steady hands, but he could see I was more interested in graphics work, so he set me up with this motion graphics company called Elastic Creative. And again, like, I knew that they did graphics, but I didn't really know what motion graphics was until I started there. So I interned there for 3 months, and I just or when I finally got introduced to motion graphics, I was just so surprised, like, everything that you could do with After Effects, and also like, I was very interested in film, and just seeing like all the film techniques that you would apply in motion graphics, working with footage and integrating graphics and all this stuff. So it just really hooked me, and so I just really applied myself and learned After Effects in those 3 months, and that was enough to convince them to offer me a job once I was done. And so they offered me a job, and that brought me to San Francisco, where I still live now. So yeah, very random. It was never planned, but that's how I ended up in motion graphics. So I was at this company for 8 years, and over time, I just taught myself Cinema 4D. Like, it started out very small, like for like specific client assignments, I might have like extruded a 3D logo or something small, and then eventually just learned a little bit more and a little bit more, and eventually just started diving deeper as I got better or knew more about the software, and then started like learning on my own or in my spare time as well, and did lots of grayscale gorilla tutorials like I'm sure most people in the industry do now. But I think what's great now is there's so many resources online, where in visual effects, most of the big companies, they all have their proprietary software, and people have been very secretive and protective of like the tools they've developed. Where in motion graphics, everyone is so willing to share, and I think it's such a big part of both the community, like people coming together, learning together, or improving on things that some people, techniques that other people have shared, and so I mean it's definitely been helpful for me. So I sort of learn on my own, but also from all the resources that are available online. Yeah, a lot, I think, and I think also just coming from an After Effects background, I think I started in 2005 or something, so it was After Effects 6.5, and at the time, or since the beginning, people have tried to emulate 3D in After Effects, and you would always try to find a clever way or workarounds of doing something. So I think people always had this sort of problem solving like mindset when it came to like doing animation, like, or what's a clever way to cheat certain things. And I think when Cinema 4D came out, that was sort of a package that wasn't so complicated, or it was more intuitive than Maya or 3D Studio Max, where you could find workarounds of doing things that might seem complicated, but wasn't that complicated in reality. My aesthetic is very it's very inspired by architecture and film. I'm a big cinephile, so there's a lot of films that are very influential in the work that I do, and I think I sort of try to pay homage to that in a lot of my work. I'm very or thematically, a lot of the personal projects I worked on are often about contrast, both visually and also thematically. I prefer to sort of work in black and white always. That's sort of my favorite aesthetic as well. Even though it's, I guess, not cliche, but you see a lot of that. But also even, I love black and white film. Just seeing that it has sort of a very it sort of dials in your focus in a different way when you're not paying attention to these full palettes. It can really or it just dials in the focus in a very specific way. I think A Space Odyssey 2001 is certainly a very influential film, just because it I think both for its time, it still holds up really well, and it's still like both the so many of the designs shown in the film are just so detailed, and again have this like really clean but timeless aesthetic. But there are so many films. Ghost in a Shell is certainly a huge inspiration for me, both thematically again and visually. I'm very interested in artificial intelligence, and I love this sort of futuristic cyberpunk world, and anything that has to do with robots and and stuff like that. Certainly has a big influence on me. Like I'm a kid of the '80s, so I grew up like watching Transformers and a lot of that stuff. So I like both like high and lowbrow art that has to do with robots, like. But there are sort of many films that inspire me. Also, a lot of Akira Kurosawa's work has a lot of influence, just because I like to sort of in film. It's interesting where you can trace the origin of certain trends. It's like interesting. You can see like Kurosawa's films that he was like a big fan of John Ford, and he was inspired by Western movies, and he then did the samurai movies, which was like his version of the Westerns, and then that sort of spawned, a new genre when Sergio Leone started making spaghetti westerns and basically remade, Kurosawa's movies. But they were just very rich, and he had sort of always like a interesting like storytelling aspect, like Rashomon, for instance, is this idea of the of telling the same story from different angles. Was at the time very innovative. We've seen it many times or done over in many other movies today, but and I think a lot of these things sound pretentious, but I think on a bigger level you can sort of condense some of these ideas and try to infuse it in animation and motion graphics, and just sort of on like from a different perspective, or just from like as an overview, try to like distill these ideas, like even if it's like simple animation you're doing. At my at my first job at Elastic Creative, I've certainly had a lot of people that taught me just well, one of the great things about that place was it was a fairly small company, and when I started we were like 6 guys doing After Effects, but because of the range of jobs we got, I got to do a little bit of everything. So I got to do anything from simple 2D animation and eventually 3D animation and roto motion tracking. I would even do like on-set visual effects supervision on shoots, and then eventually later, I think because I didn't go to like design school, I think I didn't get like a super strong aesthetic like right out the gate, like and when I started working with people like Bradley, who has such a strong visual eye, it really like or it really sort of opened a lot of doors for me. And I think a lot of my best work I've done with him because he's very collaborative, and he usually just he'll let me do my own thing, and then he'll critique it, but he sort of always sort of pulls the best out of me. And I think a lot of like the best type of directors to work with are just people that have good taste. And taste is very it's hard to define, but the same with Ash as well. Like he has a very good sense for like detail, and comes from like a strong graphic design background. So when I was working at the other company, I met this guy Michael Rickley. He was freelancing for us, and when I left the company, I kept in contact with him, and he started working with Bradley at the time, and I think he had probably or he had given him my name and shown him my website. So Bradley then contacted me for this commercial they were doing at the time, and as soon as I met him, that sort of that just sort of opened a lot of doors for sure. And Michael then later actually introduced me to Ash when they were doing the FITC title sequence for the Tokyo event in 2015. And Michael, he was art directing the titles and doing most of the animation. And he brought me on the project to help animate some shots. And so it's sort of a very small, tight-knit community, but I would say, Michael, he's one of the most talented designers I know, and I certainly owe him a lot. Yeah, I just work remotely, and I mean we see each other over Skype, but yeah, everyone is like Bradley. I guess he just moved back to San Francisco, but he's been in London for a few years, and I guess he works with people all over the world, and I think a lot of it's just me being in San Francisco. Most of the work in the entertainment industry and film industry is all in LA and New York, and I still really like San Francisco a lot. So I'm appreciative that I don't have to move, but yeah, I'm at home in my sweatpants all the time. It's maybe like 70-30-ish. I try to be fairly picky with my client work, but also work enough that I have time to, or that I can afford to take off time to sort of work on personal projects. And I think there's a unique thing with motion design today that we have the ability to sort of shape our portfolios, to reflect the work that we want to do, or like if there's something that you want to do that you don't, that you haven't done before, you can do it on your own, and you don't necessarily have to have like these days it doesn't matter that your shorts or your pieces are branded. Like I think it's almost more lame to have a logo, on your thing. Like if it's your own thing, it's you don't have to answer to anyone, and it's like completely your own. So I think there's a certain power in that. I would like to direct, and I'm planning on or at some point there's like a short film I'd like to make, but I think a lot of it just has to happen under the right circumstances. And at the moment, the type of client work I get is very usually you get the jobs based on what's on your site, and it's not that I've had opportunities to direct certain things, but things that might not have been so interesting to me. So I just want to focus my time on doing the things that I like to do the most. But again, with the personal projects, it's it's something I would do no matter what. But I'm still learning a lot of things and trying to better the skills that I have, and it's also hard sometimes to or it's better to work with other people sometimes, but sometimes if you have something like really personal that you want to say, it's hard to sort of give away control and let other people do those tasks. But in the long run, it's probably better because things take, double the time when you're doing it on your own. But I would certainly like to direct something, but I would want it to be like my own thing, and it will happen at some point, hopefully, but we'll see when. It's hard to give, I think, one definitive definition, just because when whoever came up with that word, which is basically graphic design moving, right? It seems like it's evolved so much since that, and now it encompasses so many different other genres. But I would say that it's sort of a hybrid genre. It's like a DIY version of visual effects and animation, where it sort of encompasses all of it, but anything goes. Like, there really are no rules, and people are sort of finding new hacks or new ways to do like specific techniques that previously might have taken like a lot longer. And there are new cameras are invented, and new software, and it's also, again, because the community is developing all these new tools, there are just so many things available. And people do also, as technology is getting better, like people are doing projection mapping, VR, and all this stuff. So it really is hard to define one thing. And you can have people that call themselves motion designers, but like one person might do cell animation and another person does visual effects. So what they're actually doing are completely different things, but they're sort of under the same genre still. So it's hard to define for sure. I like to direct a short film. I have something that has been stewing for a long time, and then I have a lot of smaller, like personal projects. I mean, I think if there was a way that I could just work on my own things and not do personal work, I would certainly love that. But yeah, I'd love to do something more narrative, and something more long form at some point. Maybe not so much by that. I think most of my work is, again, like a lot of the influences come from film um, and animation. So it's maybe not so much the tech scene there, because it's or I like things that are a little bit more futuristic, I guess, or things that are a little bit further out. Not to say that people in Silicon Valley aren't working on these things, but I guess I'd like to sort of explore, or visually, what the things maybe that are a few generations out. Not currently. No, it's mostly I do a lot of I'm trying to do more concept design, as far as client work, and sort of focus more on just concept development, and just because it's what I just find the most pleasurable, because that's sort of where you get to invent and both design and ideate as well, but do less of the heavy lifting, and then preserve some of that energy for my personal projects. I watch a lot of films, and I'll buy books. Like some of my friends, they say that I have all these coffee table books, which is like, mostly books with lots of pictures. But I certainly I mean, I use Pinterest like most other people, but I think um, I try to. I don't use it as much for inspiration. I guess it's more like I have it more as like a personal database where if I ever see anything online, I'll just store it there and know I have it available and can always go in and find it. But I think I mostly watch a lot of film, and through that, often you'll see. Um, Architecture, design, and fashion, or I'll see something in a film and that will sort of take me somewhere else. And yeah, I was definitely very excited. Yeah, Ash and I had kept in contact since we worked on FI2C, and well, he also knew that I was a big fan of the film, and Ash had been working on the film for a long time, and I think well, this specific part of the project was sort of like a new addition, and he needed some extra help, like the extra task was not just to create concept design, but also to animate it so it would be as close to whatever the final product or the final composite would be, or so the director could easily sign off on, both seeing an image but also seeing like how it would move as well. But yeah, it was definitely very exciting. Well, I guess my dream job would, if I could just work on my own short film or film. I think, or in my talk, like I talk a lot about how, especially doing animation, it's so time consuming just because every process takes so long. So, unfortunately, on a lot of client work, you rarely get you rarely get enough time to sort of really fully explore every venue and really fully develop something. So it'd be great to have full autonomy to do your own thing and try to develop a full project from scratch and sort of give it the time it deserves. I'm still writing or just tweaking things and thinking of logistics. What's doable, and also just you know what's cost effective as well. But I'm still concepting a lot, and it changes over time. But yeah, a lot of it's just figuring out, you know, thinking about like shooting certain scenes, like or there's so many logistics when you're doing live action, and just figuring out a good way to do it, but also like a economical way that sort of has the most impact. I'm not learning so many, as far as software, I'm not teaching myself anything new, but at the moment I'm more, I guess, trying to become better still at the things that, or the software and the tools that I'm using. I'm still improving, I think, or I still have places where I need to improve. So a lot of it's just spending time, like exploring different things, and a lot of trial and error. But I think for the most part, I'm just just trying to become better still, because 3D is so vast, for instance. But I'm also just I'm just trying to sort of fill my mind with as much information as possible. I'm trying to read more books as well, just to get new perspective as well. Not always so. Well, I'm a very visual person, so it's tough for me sometimes to concentrate enough to read a book. But I'm trying also just to get away from the computer sometimes.